Hello.
Hello.
This is Mr.
My name is
Mark
Mark
Emmons.
Emmons. I'm the Associate Dean of University Libraries and Learning Sciences.
Perfect. I am Sebastian Ellison. So, first off, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
Good, good.
All things considered.
Yeah, it's a good day out here. Good day for one of these interviews, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's get right into it. So, why did you choose this organization? First
University
off?
of New Mexico.
Uh, More particularly, like working in the library department. This is what this kind of is centered around, more like the library.
All right. Well, I've been a librarian for over 30 years now.
Oh, wow.
I started off at Occidental College
Okay.
in California. Worked there for 8 years, and I saw the job here advertised, and it sounded very interesting. It combined librarianship, which is my background and my interest, and my training, with at the time the CAPS. So you're
Okay.
familiar with our tutoring services here on campus.
Mhm.
It was a combined organization at the time. I liked that, and I liked the opportunity to be in charge of instruction, information literacy. And so I applied, and I was lucky enough to be successful. I've been here over 22 years now.
Very nice. And have you found yourself to be, engulfed with all sorts of things, library, like you can't get away from it, or there's a nice balance in your life?
Oh, in my overall life, there's a nice balance. At
Okay.
work, of course,
Yes.
it's all things library. Our library is interesting in that we also have a credit course program called OILS,
Okay.
Organization, Information, and Learning Sciences. And that produces people who can do training in organizations, whether that's instructional design or just improving processes in work through training. And I'm lucky enough to be able to teach in that program as well.
Oh, wow. So that's a very popular program here.
It does pretty well. I mean,
Okay.
it's a mid-sized program, but it's one of the few that's grown over the last few years as the population of students has shrunk.
Good, good. So, I guess, what is your role in your resource? What particular responsibilities do you take on?
Right now, I'm associate dean over the entire college. So,
Okay. Oh, wow.
mostly, I came out of public services. That was my specialty until just a few months ago. So that's every aspect of the library that takes care of student, staff, and faculty. So when students come in and they need help doing research, or they need guidance in how to do research, or be taught how to do research, we do that. If you want to check out books, we do that. If you want to, not right now as much, but to find a good place to study and collaborate with other students, we set those spaces up. We make it possible for students to succeed using resources,
Okay.
intellectual resources, books, journals, data sets, whatever kind of information you might need, and how to use that information is something we do. And then we also provide the spaces where students can collaborate and learn together.
Oh, wow.
That's changed a little bit during the pandemic because we've tried to socially distance
Yep.
all of our furniture so that that's less possible
Okay.
for safety reasons.
Yeah.
But ultimately, and there's a lot more to it than that, we help faculty with their research cycle and their data for their research from beginning through the entire middle end. There's a roadrunner. And so we have our rare books, our special collections. We have our distinctive collections dealing with Latin America, Native America, and the Southwest. There's so many things that we do.
Yeah.
But that's a quick overview.
Oh, wow. Very interesting. What do you like to do outside this resource? It could be, side hobbies, or a lot of time that's taken up by outside responsibilities, maybe.
Oh, you mean when I'm not at work?
Yes.
Well, when I'm not at work, I am a librarian, and believe it or not, I actually like to read. So that's
I
not
hope
true
so.
of all librarians, believe it or
Okay.
not, but I do like to read. Before the pandemic, I played basketball regularly to keep in shape with
I
my
love
friends.
basketball.
Yeah, absolutely. Over in Johnson Gym, but right now that's not happening. So
Yeah.
unfortunately, I've been rather sedentary. So I hike instead with my wife. We go up into the mountains. That's
You-
fun.
Have you gone to, what's it, La Luz? La Luz
The
Trail?
La Luz Trail may be the only trail that we haven't completed yet
Oh, wow.
on this side of the Sandias. I think we've probably completed every other trail except that one.
Oh,
We'll get there eventually.
that's one of my favorites. I love the view out there.
Yeah.
What do you enjoy most working here in the library?
Oh, I think, well, this is a really great group of people to work with great ideas, and even though we've been shrinking because of the budget in terms of the number of faculty and staff we have,
Of course.
it's a really willing group of people who want to make it possible for students to succeed. And so that's always the number one thing.
Yeah.
I mean,
of
in
course.
general, I like being a librarian. You're a generalist,
Mhm.
and you get to do a little bit of everything. Um, I like UNM. I like New Mexico. It's a great student body. We have a mission here that not all Research One universities have, which is to help to have really open access to our university.
Okay.
And so the library is very useful in helping students who maybe aren't as prepared as say students
Yeah.
at other Research One universities.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's reflected all over campus, not just in the library.
Okay. And would you just mind speaking up just a little bit?
Oh, sure, I
Of
can
course.
speak up.
Sorry. What made you pursue this field and got you where you are today?
Well, interestingly enough, I always loved libraries, but when I was an undergrad at UCLA, I walked into the library school and said, "What does it take to major in library science?" And they said, "Well, you have to get a master's degree." I said, "Yeah, I'll never do that."
Yeah.
But ultimately, I returned to it. I interviewed librarians to see what the career was like.
Yeah.
It sounded very interesting to me. I was a teacher before I was a librarian. I was able to use my teaching skills as a librarian. And it worked out perfectly for me because it has that, like I said earlier, that broad range of duties that's so interesting, and you get to help people. And so I specialize in public services where you teach and where you help. And those are two things I enjoy doing.
Of course. Yeah. Very good relationship there. Oh, speaking of relationship, what is the relationship between your credentials and what you do?
My credentials. So the master's degree. So to become a librarian, the base credential is a Master of Library Science
Mhm.
or a Master of Library and Information
Okay.
Science. And so that sets the grounding. Libraries have changed dramatically since I got my library degree more than just over 30 years ago now.
Yes.
And so what's relevant is a lot of the philosophical, a lot of the ethical issues for librarianship, a lot of the overarching mission ideas.
Mhm.
What's changed is the internet has come to the fore. It was a gleam in the eye back then and certainly not widely used.
Yeah.
And that's changed everything we do. It's transformed pretty much everything a librarian does.
Of course, made it a lot easier, I would assume.
It makes it a lot easier, especially for the users, the students and the
Yes.
faculty, but it also makes it more complex in other ways for us in trying to provide seamless access in the background.
Okay. Yeah. How far does your experience with this field trace back? Were you involved in other libraries? Were you pulled apart from them to come here, or what kind of?
So a lot of people who go into academic librarianship worked as students in the library when they were in college. I was not one of those people.
Oh, I see.
So for me, I had an interest, and like I said, I interviewed people.
Mhm.
But my actual experience started in 1988 at UCLA as a student in the master's program working in their graduate library.
Oh, wow.
And then I worked 8 years at Occidental and 22 years here.
And what are kind of differences, the main differences you can compare from a smaller university's library like this to a UCLA?
Oh, well, there's three things. I mean, UCLA is a top 10 Research One university in terms of its library's size. And so, but even there, same thing that happens here. Complaints from faculty and students, oh, you don't have enough, you don't
Mhm.
have what I need.
Yep.
And so that was true at UCLA, that's true here. Occidental College, which is a liberal arts college, had a much smaller collection and a much smaller staff. I think we serve the same mission though, underlying,
of
and
course.
so a lot of what we do is very similar.
Yeah, with purpose. Okay, so do you have any hobbies?
Hobbies.
Yeah.
I mentioned a few. What else do I do? I like to play games and cards with my friends. I like to travel. I love restaurants and going out for food and preparing food. I'm
Me
a
too.
foodie. My wife and I are both foodies. Those are some of my hobbies.
Very nice. Do you find yourself traveling before all this
Oh, sure,
virus
plenty
stuff?
of plenty of traveling, both for work conferences and for pleasure with my wife and my family before they became adults.
Very cool, very cool. And then I know you talked about basketball. Are there any other sports you like to enjoy, maybe watch or play in
Oh,
free time?
I like to watch primarily football and basketball. When the World Cup comes around every 4 years, I watch the World Cup. When the Olympics come around, I watch the Olympics,
I love
the
the
Summer
Olympics.
Olympics. Yeah, but mostly I watch football and basketball, and mostly I just play basketball or hike.
Oh wow! So do you have any football or basketball teams?
Sure. I'll say primarily I'm a UCLA guy. I know that's the wrong thing to say here, working here at
Yeah.
UNM, but I got both my undergraduate and my master's at UCLA,
Oh,
and
cool.
so and I was in the band. So you
Yeah,
know,
a lot of ties there.
yeah, a lot of ties. I root for UNM as well, but
Yeah.
UCLA is my first love.
Good. Do you enjoy working with this program?
I do.
Okay. And what kind of separates your guys' library from another library?
Well, in New Mexico, we are the largest library in New Mexico. So we are the flagship for the state of New Mexico, as the University of New Mexico is the flagship. And so we have partnerships all across the state with other libraries, with our branch campuses. But in many of those partnerships, we're the central partner because of that. And so I think we're differentiated by our size primarily, but we also have a lot of good people working here.
What is an average day in this program like? And think of before all this masks and the virus and stuff like that. How
Right.
many, people, students come in the morning, come in the midday.
Right. So from a student perspective, we have probably before the pandemic somewhere between 1.5 million and 2 million people come through our doors every year.
Oh wow.
And so we are easily one of the number one places people come. You're a freshman, so you haven't seen these votes yet, but when students vote about the best place to study, in a recent year, Zimmerman came in number one, Fine Arts and Design came in number two, and Centennial came in number three. And those are our three libraries. And so we have made a concerted effort to make it a place students want to be, and undergrads especially want to be here. And so at the same time that's happening, we also have another couple million people a year coming on into our online presence, into our web pages to do research. And so, and that they may be overlapping, we don't know that one way or another, but we do know that's how many people come. And so it's a mix of people coming to use our spaces to study, to collaborate with others, and to do research. And research involves with secondary sources, with information sources.
Of course.
And so that's a typical day.
Yeah, very nice. So I'm just gonna check the time really quick.
Okay.
While I'm doing that, have you used this resource yourself, and was it helpful? Were you able to find any kinks in the system?
So the answer to that is yes. After I came here, I decided to get a doctorate degree, and I got it here at UNM, so I'm an alumnus of here as well.
Okay.
And I used our resources intensively. Plus, before I did that, and I was just a frontline librarian before I moved into administration, and on a daily basis, I help people with their research. And so there are holes in the system that we're trying to fix all the time.
Yes.
We have a catalog that lists everything we own, but its discovery layer isn't always as good as it could be, so we're trying to fix the discovery layer. We do studies every 3 years about student satisfaction with our collections, with our spaces, with our services, and we make improvements based on that. We didn't do one this year because of the pandemic, but we'll get back to them when the pandemic's over. We do small scale studies. One of the things that we're doing is we're partnering with IT on campus to create an Adobe Creative Commons.
Okay.
That's going to be built in October. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it won't be usable until the pandemic's over because it's a shared space, a shared studio space where students can go and create videos, for example.
Okay, so tell me more about that. So, I guess would it be public, open for all sorts of use, or do you have to reserve your spot and reserve like a room type thing?
We don't know yet how popular it will be. Our
Okay.
anticipation is that we'll have people reserve spots,
Yes.
and they'll have to be Lobo card holders primarily at this point. We don't want to necessarily let the non-Lobo card holders use it until we know the usage patterns by our own students.
Okay.
But once we know that, we may expand it more broadly. But the idea is that you have a studio space where you can create podcasts, you can create videos,
Wow.
and you have all the equipment you need to do that. We would also check out equipment to people for the production side, and of course the studios for the post-production side.
Wow.
And
Very
so,
interesting.
so that's something we're working on with IT, and that's something we heard from students that they would want. And as we were setting it up, we interviewed students. We had a desk that we asked people to stop by and tell us their thoughts, and we do that for any kind of project we embark on. We
Okay.
involve students. The next thing we're doing, which isn't going to be as relevant to you as a freshman until maybe you become a grad student here, is we're creating a graduate commons, a space for graduate students to do their research and
Oh, wow.
and get away from undergrads.
Yeah. Do you know where that would be?
Yeah, it's going to
located?
be in the basement of Zimmerman Library as well.
Wow.
And that construction is going to happen sometime this fall. The date hasn't been set yet,
Mhm.
so
Okay.
that kind of thing.
Very interesting. What has been the hardest part of your job, and has it made it question your work?
I don't really question my work because I like my work. The hardest part lately has actually been the budget cuts. We've had budget reductions. This year's budget alone, we had a $1.7 million cut in our budget.
It's crazy.
And so we ended up having to cut a faculty line and not with people in it. We didn't lay anyone off. We didn't fire anyone. We didn't even furlough anyone. We've done none of that, and we don't plan to do any of that. But we had vacancies that we're not going to be able to fill.
Yeah.
And what that does is it makes it hard to innovate because we still have to have our baseline of service, and then we would like to innovate as well, and that takes people.
Mhm. So, actually, speaking of budget cuts, I was actually involved in a budget cut by my work, so I kind of get how that feels. I mean, I'm not working full time or nothing like that because I'm a student,
Right.
but still trying to make ends meet, living separated. It kind of just makes it a little bit more difficult, of course. That's definitely
It
been
does. I mean, it
lately.
takes resources to get things done.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if we have another 5% cut like we're probably going to have next year's budget, again, that makes it hard to innovate without stopping something you're doing.
Yeah.
And many things we know we're doing, we know our students value, and we don't want to stop any of those.
Yeah. So, are you able to tell me about any particular studies, maybe that you've done that your favorite ones, or a lot of important ones, maybe?
When you say studies, research that I've done?
Yeah, research that you've kind of conducted that you're proud of. Of course, you're proud of all your research.
Well, to various extent. I have two research agendas. One involves resources for doing research in film and cinema,
Yeah.
and the other involves student success. I guess the one that I like to point to for student success is I partnered with the English writing director. Her name is Wanda Martin. She's now retired.
Oh yeah.
And we did an analysis of English 120 papers, which is now English 1120,
Mhm.
before and after we implemented the library instruction program. And we did a statistical analysis to see if there was a difference in student success. And in one area there was, in two areas there weren't. And so we did a follow-up qualitative study to see why there wasn't. And the findings were really quite interesting. And that's one of the studies I'm proud of. The other one is a statistical analysis of the difference investment in libraries make in student outcomes, most notably whether students persist and graduate, so retention and graduation rates. And I did this two different ways. I did this just as a study, and then I went much deeper in it for my dissertation. And both studies showed about a 2% difference, predicted difference, and the more you spend on your library, the more students graduate and persist.
Oh
And
wow.
so those are two of the ones that I like. And then I wrote a book on, a reference book that of the kind they don't really write anymore on film resources.
Mhm.
That was quite intensive to do, but the outcome I liked, and it did well for its type of books. Those types of books aren't produced anymore
Good.
because of the internet.
Yeah, it's kind of like an index of, like, I guess, film resources, maybe.
It's pretty much an index of film resources with an annotated bibliography, a description of each and every resource and what it's useful for.
Okay, very nice. Okay, so here we go. How does your organization help better the campus, in your opinion?
Oh, well, I'm biased. I think the library is one of the most important organizations
I
on
agree.
campus. And so I think we help better it by making students more successful, both through their research and through their ability to have a collaborative space. I also think we make faculty research more successful. And ultimately, my background is information literacy and instruction. I think we make a big difference because we teach students how to do research, and that's an aspect of critical thinking that's critically important.
Very helpful.
And so information literacy is the other one.
Yeah. Well, what is the value of the resource as a whole, or like, what are your goals, your overall goals you are trying to accomplish here in your time?
Right. So I can speak in broad terms. I was once told, and I have no reason to doubt this, that our physical collections, not our online collections, but our physical collections are the highest cost insured item in the state of New Mexico.
Wow.
So just on that value alone of monetary value, but I think the value really lies in the content of those materials,
Of course, knowledge.
and in the knowledge that they contain and that students can engage with. And like I said a moment ago, the information literacy, where students learn critical thinking skills around information.
Of course. As a member of the resource staff, what services did you find most useful for students? Maybe CAPS or...
Okay, so CAPS is no longer officially part of the library, but I find it.
That.
Yeah, no, it's in our building, but it's a separate reporting line now, and that happened more than 10 years ago. CAPS is incredibly important. If you're talking about resources that aren't library related,
more library
okay.
related.
Well, I just gonna keep reiterating. It's a combination of the collections that we have and the information literacy, critical thinking skills that we impart.
Okay. How has your organization been affected by the virus? Maybe some changes you've seen prominently?
Well, first of all, we closed in March when the pandemic started, and we didn't reopen until the third week of classes.
Oh, wow.
And so the buildings physically were closed. We were able to provide our services, our instruction services, our reference services. We built, not right away, but we built a carry-out service. Our Center for Southwest Research, which is for our rare books that cannot be taken out of the building, created an appointment service so that people could come in and in physically distanced settings and do their research. But for the most part, the one thing that we really lost was that physical space that our undergrads value most of all. And so even now, with our libraries open again, we've set it so it's quarter capacity, and we've set up all the furniture so that there's not physical spaces for students to work in groups, with a very few exceptions. We have a couple study rooms here, a couple study rooms in Centennial where people can work in very small groups, like 2 people. And so that's the biggest loss from the pandemic, was that physical space. And like I said, even when we open, it's really quite diminished from what it used to be.
Yeah. So I noticed when I went in there's only like here and there's a couple of chairs, but most of them are stacked up on top of each other in groups.
Right. And so I don't know if you had ever been to our Learning Commons before the pandemic.
I have, yeah.
So you knew what it used to look like, with a thriving, very vibrant area with students collaborating closely together. That buzz was always in the air.
Oh, yeah.
And we've lost some of that with the pandemic.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. what is the mission of this resource? I know you stated it early in this interview, but everyone.
So if I were to summarize in one sentence, it's connecting people and knowledge. And we used to
There you
actually
go.
have that as our tagline several years ago.
Uh-huh.
But it's more than that. It's also fostering learning, fostering creativity, and so all around information and collections and knowledge.
Okay. Do you see any specific programs here for women in particular?
We don't have programs designated for women in the libraries.
Yes.
We have no, we don't have any program that's this is for men, this is for women.
Yeah, okay. Of course. Do you see all your staff members working along together consistently, together effectively to produce, I guess, a efficient resource for your campus?
Yeah, I think we work. Any organization has issues at time to time, but I think we work together really well, and we've had to be efficient with all of the loss of lines and positions.
Yeah.
And so, for the most part, I think we do work efficiently.
Yeah, I know you touched on there being a program for, or not a program, but the graduate commons. But are there any programs that you see in the libraries only for graduates, only for graduate students?
So that
versus undergrad? Do you see any?
Right. So when we do our surveys every third year, we always find the same thing. Our undergraduates value our spaces, and our faculty and grad students value our collections.
Okay.
That's the top. They don't not value undergrads value collections as well.
Yeah.
But that's lower on the list.
Yeah.
And grads value spaces as well, but that's lower on the list because it's really around collections. And so the reason for the grad commons is the graduate students came to us several years ago, and we finally were able to raise outside monies to build a space for them.
Oh, wow.
We have a small space now, but this is going to be a much bigger, more elaborate space.
Very cool. Are there any services you have to pay for? I mean, obviously, besides not returning a book or damages to it.
Besides not returning a book, I'm trying to think, do we have anything you need to pay for? Okay, so our Center for Southwest Research can charge for copying resources. They can't be checked out of the library, so you can't bring them out to copy yourself.
Makes sense.
That might be the only thing that we charge for is copies in the center. Our interlibrary loan is free. It doesn't cost anything to check out a book, of course. Only if you really permanently lose materials will you get charged.
Okay. And I know you touched on making appointments to meet in some study rooms, but is that really it for appointments? You don't have to make an appointment to go into the library like on the weekends or?
So currently we're open only on Sundays for the weekends. That's because of the pandemic. We reduced our hours dramatically. We used to be open till 2 a.m. Sunday through Thursday, and then most of the day Friday, Saturday, and then many hours Sunday until 2 a.m. So what do you have to make appointments for? Because of the pandemic, you have to make appointments for going to the Center for Southwest Research.
Okay.
What else do you have to make appointments for? Study rooms for sure. Right now, that's about it. You had to make an appointment to pick up your books during our carry-out service, but we've stopped that now that the building is open.
Yeah.
You can make appointments to meet individually with our subject librarians. What's your major?
Biology.
Biology. And so you could meet with our biology librarian one-on-one, but usually you do that by making an appointment, and that's always been true. You can make an appointment just by going to their profile on our webpage and click on their calendar and make an appointment.
Okay. Do you have any particular complaints working here?
Other than the reductions in budget, not really.
No? Perfect. And obviously this question will be proved by you being here today, but how accessible are administrators, would you say?
I think we're pretty accessible. I know I am.
Yeah,
I'm
of
an
course.
associate dean, and I'm happy to meet with
Yeah.
you. The main issue
Thank
with
you.
administrators being accessible is not our desire. It's just sometimes our calendars get
Yes,
very,
of
very
course.
full.
Yeah.
But we're happy to meet with students.
Of course. Well, I would like to thank you for your time here today and your wonderful interview.
All
And
right.
not only that, but always taking the time to take out your schedule and come meet with me. So
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I'm glad to do it.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Oh, sure. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions.
Okay, I will. Thank